Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you once again for joining me. I'm Phil Rice. Welcome to the Phil Rice YouTube channel. And it's been a busy day, I have to say, but it remains a pleasure to be able to serve the various communities. And I want to say a big thank you to everyone for continuing to enjoy the content. And remember, please note that there are multiple ways that you can support the guests that I bring on and also this channel. And I'm very grateful for all of those of you who currently do that. And there will be some more options coming to you that you will be able to essentially support the channel with. That will be probably a little bit more convenient in some ways, and it's always very much appreciated. And as always, it's a standard shout out for this month. I want to say thank you to violetflamestudios.co.nz for sponsoring this month's live streaming software upgrade. And so with this, I get to essentially up the production value of the live streams so you guys get more goodies, I get more toys to play with, and we can continue to make this a really fun and interactive experience. So thank you to violetflamestudios.co.nz. Go check out their website. Ascension, the Immortal Alchemist playable demo coming out approximately middle of October. Check out my previous live stream with John from Violet Flame Studios, and you can see some gameplay footage and a bit more details. Now, today I have with me a good friend of mine that I haven't had on for a long time because this is my second YouTube channel years ago, but Greg was one of the first people. I think he even was the first person on my previous live stream. So Greg is a Reiki master teacher, healer, practicer, and also meditation instructor, and also an astral traveler. I was going to say astral travel teacher, but he's an astral traveler who teaches as well. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring on Mr. Greg Doyle. How are you, sir?
Hi, Phil. How are you? Good to see you. I'm very, very well. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and it's always a pleasure, my good bro. You know, we've been in contact for many years through some very interesting moments in history, and you know, both of us being Reiki teachers and practices, you know, we share a bond in that sense. And I just realized that tomorrow is actually the birthday of the founder of the system of Asui Reiki Ryoho. And so it's quite nice. So I think I'm going to have a good day of doing a bit of self-healing stuff. I'm going to go hang out in the bush tomorrow. But it's always a pleasure to see you, Greg. Now, man, what's been happening, dude? You're a busy fella. I've got some of your deets up here about what's going on, but let's just have a catch up. What's been happening?
Yeah. Well, it's been good. I think I've mentioned to you that I had this great. Well, she's actually my first Reiki master that I ever trained, and on the Sunshine Coast, and we did we did a astral yoga retreat, and it's a beautiful temple she's got there, and I just love it. It's the second time I've been to the temple, and we just put on like sort of yoga pertaining to the chakra system, and then going into meditations, and we did like as you can see, like a 5-hour thing, and we actually had it full because she's not supposed to have more than 16 people there, so it was really good. We'll put more of those on, so I'm still probably slightly out of voice handstand, but yeah, that was really, look, as you know yourself, Phil, sharing this stuff in itself is a liberation, and is an honor, because like Reiki, really, I guess one sort of channeling all this information, and I've also been working hard on my book, which I've got going, which you'll love. Yeah, which is a fiction book about kind of what we're all on about. But it's good with the context of you know, the astral experience that is an innate experience within us all. So look, you know, and I'm like you. I'm an explorer, and I was saying to you just before we went on air that being in this temple reminded me of like a past life, where a little bit like what you were doing. And I think that what you're doing is to be really honored as well, because you are actually the custodian of a modern temple, and this is you know, reaching these people. It's so good, and often when you're at the other end, where you are, where you're sitting, you don't realize the effect you have. So I just want to say a big thanks to you for all that you're
Yeah.
doing, and thanks for chatting about this stuff and for sharing it with a wider community.
Oh, thank you, bro. I really appreciate that. Like there's some time that goes into this, and it's great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, pleasure. Otherwise, I've got a
Yeah.
course coming up again on the weekend. I've got a Reiki 1 course, so, and they're always good fun. Lots of meditation and stuff. So, yeah. So, just sort of, and I've also found, as you said, we've known each other through these changes in kind of the world as everyone's going through, and I've noticed sort of changes, and you've kind of got to go with the flow of things. And at the moment, I'm finding courses and workshops are kind of, and you're probably finding, reaching out to the wider community with your podcast and stuff is it's sort of different to what it was years ago. It's kind of a change in energy. So I'm finding, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, man. Prior to it's so funny because it has changed. It just feels different, like all of
Mm.
it. The way, yeah, it's almost hard to kind of verbalize, because it's just, and pardon me, I think too that there's an adjustment, and an adaptation to something that this thing that I'm struggling to put into words. You know, I've noticed that like you said, you kind of, it's such a big wave. It's somewhat detrimental to try to go up against it, and you kind of got to find a way to go with it, see where the opportunities lie within it, and but also remain yourself as well. It's like I feel like it's almost like there's a whole bunch of things that you got to kind of
Mm.
deal with now. There's all these plates that are spinning on sticks, and you got to keep maintaining them all, and it's been very noticeable.
Yeah, and I even, as I was just hinting at before we went online, that I've kind of, a few of my clients have said, Greg, you've gone quiet in the last few years. And I think that on a certain level, we've all turned inward a bit, and I've also reflected that notion of being quiet and going within. Like, you probably feel the same way, and I think a lot of the listeners and a lot of the watchers will too. That, like, I feel I could just sit down and just sort of just meditate all day, and just that's it. It's really interesting, and what that energy is. So there's kind of this energy that thrusts us inwards, and at the same time, there's this apparent turmoil going on the outside. I say apparent because, as we know, it's all part of Maya, it's all part of the illusion. But there's kind of like, how do we deal with that? Um, how do we merge the two worlds at the moment? And so that's very much like what you were saying. You've got to find a way to kind of bend, and that in the right way. So, personally, there's kind of a lot of people I've got to get back to and things, and I've become a little bit terrible at that. But then by the same token, with the groups I am training or doing workshops, I'm very involved. So I find, and I've got to do my own. I think a lot of people find the same. You've got to do your own exploration. Like, even though, I've been doing this for a while now, and you as a good Reiki buddy put me onto a couple of good books with the Reiki. And it's been really good to kind of re-explore that, because what I realize is it's fascinating. You're mentioning Usui's birthday. Like, in the end, we're practicing Reiki more than they did, because they didn't live that long after. Like, Usui didn't live that long after he had got his Reiki. Kind of how to play the long game in what we
How to play
do.
the long game.
Yeah, in the best sense. And like, it's, and then yesterday, I was looking up. I'll have to send you these things, but because in a certain part of my lineage, I got these extra symbols. I think I mentioned to you, and they actually came from a woman, Denise Titania, who was an American Tibetan Buddhist nun, and so it was good to find online actual existence of these particular symbols and their meanings, because I was taught them many years ago, and this is the first time I've actually found them online.
Oh, wow.
So doing a bit of research through some of the sources in those books you mentioned. So I find we're sort of digging in two directions. We're digging outward in our world, and as spiritual teachers, we're looking how to reach more people. But at the same time, we're digging even further back into ourselves, and to kind of, it's almost like that spark is there that we always had, that motivation that got us into this. But you're having to kind of go in deeper to kind of to find that spark and keep nurturing it and blowing upon its embers. So I must be saying something interesting. I'm not quite sure, but anyway, there we go. That's my
No, I hear you and I feel you. You know, like
Hmm.
I think what happens is that, you know, you can reach plateaus of like, because things are quite you know, I've actually got a really great book called Dream Alchemy by a guy, Ted Andrews. I think Ted Andrews, I can't remember. A wonderful writer, and he talks about it in one of his, because the guided meditations in this book are exceptional. Like they're for dream incubation, highly symbolic, very Jungian, just fantastic, and just rich, absolutely rich. And he talks about in one of them, you know, like essentially when we start having new experiences, we're like children, and as we carry on, you know, these experiences become normalized, and the novelty and the honeymoon period tends to sort of like diminish, and as it becomes normalized. And so the thing is, though, is that there's still much more to experience and explore out there, but it reminds us that we've kind of got to keep seeking and searching, because you know, some things do get presented to us and emerge into our awareness that we can follow, but there's also nothing like you know, following a thread, reading a book, and then getting a key item out of that book, and that takes you to a complete other book on a whole nother topic, and you go on an exploration journey. And I guess it's going to depend a little bit on, you know, people's makeup and proclivities and general, you know, interests in that. And you know, we've got some similar sorts of interests. You know, we're both into energy healing and going out of body, and you know, and our birthdays, we're in the same month as well. And so, you know, I got to say, you know, it's funny. I'm not an astrologer, but I have to say that, you know, the more I sort of like, I sort of poke my head in the door of astrology and then pull it back out and have a look at the world, the people around me and what's going on, and not just the people around me, but the events. And that, I tell you what, it's starting to get I'm starting to be a little bit more convinced of it. And not that I dismiss it, I'm open to it, but you know, there's these seasons in life as well. And it's funny because the Dream Alchemy book talks about this too. You know, these times or these blocks of, like, you know, they call, in this book, it refers to the 7-year blocks. And at this time, you know, like you may be an explorer, you know, and this time you may be becoming a teacher. Like, you know, that's essentially what, you know, I mean, you got a couple of years on me, but, you know, essentially we're teachers, you know, we're exploring, and we're trying to pull things back in and verbalize that, articulate that to people so that they can benefit from it, whether they just benefit from having some peace of mind. I know some people do these practices, they have an experience and they're like, oh, great, sweet, okay, I'm satisfied. I've scratched that itch, tick that box. I can get on with my life now. I've had a convincing, satisfying experience with something beyond the physical. And then other people, you know, are wanting to be explore further, and then you know, become teachers for whatever reason. And you know, but continuing the search and remaining that you know, seeing the world through the eyes of a child and remaining interested. You know, we've talked about this many times too, that, you know, previous interests have fallen away, and, you know, we've sort of got, you know, like, we're locked onto these new arenas of exploration in a sense. And I guess, you know, for myself, as I can speak and say that, you know, in previous years, fattening out my personal practice with things like Hermetics and Qigong, and then I haven't got it here, but I had a book. There's a new book by Franz Steiner, who's a eminent Reiki scholar. He's got, you know, these two books are obviously, this one here's a absolute classic, must have. This is The Inner Heart of Reiki. This is a great book too. But his new book essentially goes into something that crosses over into the Franz Barden third book, which is Kotodama, which is the power of the word, and how the Japanese, in a sense, have their own form of Kabbalah. Now, so, you know, following these threads, staying intrigued, looking for those little sparks of interest to sort of drill down on and to fatten out and bring into my life and to those around me. Because essentially, if the people around me are doing well, then I feel like I'm on the right track, you know, and I want to see the people who ask me for information get the best of me as well. And I have to say, one thing is that I'm with the way people talk nowadays and the stuff that's being advertised in that, there is lots of opportunities to check myself for being wound up or gaslit, because and so that's, you know, staying still and not, you know, you reach those thresholds of like, yeah, I'm chill, but then it's like, all right, let's see how chill you really are, and then it's like it gives you a good poke in the ribs sort of thing. So yeah, but I hear you, man.
Yeah. It's so true what you're saying. I think we get these thresholds, and like I'm fascinated with motivation, like and what really is behind motivation and things, and as you say, like you have a few like experiences, or like if I relate to my astral experiences to you, which I've talked to you about, and when they really came, you know, a lot of these experiences. And what can happen is a lot of people can walk away like that's enough, you know, and that you embody the experience, and that's fine too. But then you think, you know, as an explorer, you know, and I tell all of my students this too, you've got to kind of have a playful sense of kind of I want more. So there's this aspect of your psyche that plays at demanding more interaction, right? And when I say plays at it, because in the end we are everything. We have it all. So we're kind of in both worlds where we know that we are complete, and I think that's a good way of being. But by the same token, to still explore and not be cut off from, because even as both of us Reiki masters, you know, we could look at all the stuff out there on Reiki and think, okay, how can I can't know all this. This is incredible. Maybe I'm not good enough. And that's where a lot of people I know come to me and say, oh, but, you know, what if I'm not feeling empathetic enough? What? And I'll always remember I mentioned to you this a while back, but there was some Japanese Reiki master who said a good comment, said that Reiki is not human energy. So we don't have to worry about that. It's not, our egos won't get in the way. So we can be researching and developing ourselves and still sharing and doing what we do know, what we have and what we're channeling, and at the same time. So there's this balance between knowing that we are the cosmos, knowing that we are complete, that we have this sense of perfection, and at the same time being that child that child that is looking out of the hedge for the first time, thinking, oh wow, what's there, and to keep that motivation. And so often I kind of take how do I say, kind of take stock of where I'm at. I know I probably mentioned this to you as well, but at the end of last year I kind of was feeling a bit stale and went on this road trip with my wife and my pup, the little pup we had, and drove about 5,000 K actually. But it was really good because at the beginning, I kind of had nothing to say. It was funny because I said to Moni, my wife, look, I've reached the point at the end of last year. I just felt I had nothing. There's nothing to say. I wanted to be quiet. So I needed to be in environments that I didn't know. So we drove a back route. You know, I think on Christmas Day we were out whoop whoop, seeing these wild goats almost ramming the car, because a lot of inland Australia has just wild goats, which you don't realise. And you've got to be careful when you're driving along the highway because the goat can take you out. But no one talks about that. But anyway, it was really good because I just needed to, sometimes you just need to have new experiences and just be like, you know, I had nothing to say. And then little by little, I found my voice came back again and the sense of joy again. And so you've got to kind of know when it's time to go walkabout, when it's time to go in that direction or this direction. And do know that every little thing you read and every little thing that you research, you are embodying, you know. And the beautiful thing in the astral is you can have experiences, and non-verbally you embody that experience, you change, and you notice it very quickly in the astral because it's kind of a more connected to what we are. So, but by the same token, anything that we, when we have interest, it's like an arrow of energy that we're setting our intention into. So, I think everybody's got to know that it's really good to remain inquisitive and childlike, and to keep following those little hints, those little smells that you're interested in things, and just sort of, and also to have that with the astral thing, because I know a lot of people have an experience and then they find it difficult to get back into it. You've kind of often, and your listeners might be interested, but at the beginning of any kind of astral course or workshop, I always say, what is your intention? And people look at me and go, oh, well, I'm here. That's my intention. I say, no. What would you most like to experience? Like, set anything aside. Just what would you, from your heart, most like to experience in these clearer realms, of consciousness? What is it? And because your aura will be carrying that intention anyway. But if you make it conscious to yourself, then it's like there's an acknowledgement with your higher bodies is that you wish to have a conscious experience of that. So it's very good to really look into yourself and think, what is it you would like to experience? And also that process keeps you in that childlike feeling of exploring, just exploring, and to question what is it that you would like to experience rather than just being happy. So it is a dichotomy. We are, of course, everything. We are in bliss at all times, but by the same token, there are these children or these human aspects of ourselves that are running around gathering experiences and enjoying the experience.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I think because there are. I mean, I hang out in a bunch of different communities, and some of them are a little more friendly to the sort of the recreational aspect of exploring sort of the other realms, and some not so much. They talk about things can degenerate into astral tourism, but personally, when I have a wonderful astral experience, I'm waking up extremely energized and better for it. Like I'm feeling like intrigued and validated in my quest for higher understanding. And I think, any of these sorts of experiences, I just think that introducing people to the conversation so they can sort of start their journey and sharing teaching so they can have a personal direct experience. Because like I said,
can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt
Sure.
you a second because you're exactly right. And I think that the thing about the astral experience is not even often the actual experience you have, but it's the lucidity of mind. It's the garden that you're in when you had that experience. And that's what always fascinated me was the beauty, the ecstasy, the bliss, the clarity, the singular mindedness that I'm in when I'm in the astral, regardless of the experience I'm having. So to me, that's the magnetic pull, is toward that state that I know is a truer state of my consciousness. Yeah. So thanks for reminding me of that. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. And I remember years ago, you really nailed it for me when you said, well, we were talking about why are we doing what we're doing. I mean, we could be professional musos earning good cash, really. Like you've got a background as a conductor, like, I don't know, is that the best paying gig in the orchestra?
Yep.
Yeah. And you did very well, and you've been to Austria, and you're a violinist, right? Yeah, that's not a simple instrument. And here we are, Reiki teachers, probably one of the hardest gigs, but it's also probably one of the easiest ones. And as far as healing gigs go, because most people have heard of it, why are we doing this? And you nailed it sweet when you said, as far as astral travel goes, it's like I'm exploring the phenomena. I'm going off and having these experiences, and I'm bringing back things, sharing the stories. What a joy to be able to do that. And I remember you sharing not that long ago, you met some Buddhist monks who found out what you do, and they were quite surprised that you were able to say that you're basically generating an income from being being an energy healer. And there's a large body of Buddhism that doesn't like the idea of healing people because that sort of goes against their karma, or or thereabouts. Yeah, we've got to keep feathering and fostering our interests, especially in the disempowerment program that runs through this world we live in is relentless. And I'm not going to wander into some kind of conspiratorial thing here. I'm just pointing out what I've viewed from being an entrepreneur for many years, and being a musician, being a confident musician, and then having young children come to me and adults in that, and watching them transform once they became confident with an expression form that they felt like they may be judged on as well, because there's a fear of judgment in these types of things too. And, I really noticed it with young kids who would go through the transformation of not being able to play and then being able to play, and then just watching their general composure change, their language change. And I think too that, it's important for seekers and practices and teachers of these things, obviously, to continually nourish the greater reality as a reality, because it can quite easily be overtaken by this sort of artificially imposed kind of construct of how life is supposed to be. And so we're kind of on the forefront in some ways, putting ourselves out there. Like I said in another thing, my name is Phil Rice. That's my real name. This one here. Hang on, where is it? This one here is not a fake name. It's like you're Greg Doyle. We're a couple of dudes. We're both ex-musos. Well, we contain those things, but we're exploring things. We're also like going, when you and I are just standing here talking, saying, look, we're out the front doing this stuff, making sure that our own interests are maintained so we can keep bringing things forward for people. There's value in that for those who maybe are still seeking and looking for authentic, sincere conversation too. Like one of the reasons I really like hanging out with you, Greg, is, like we're just a couple of lads chatting about things. We both know that this energy healing thing, man, you've done it enough. I've done it enough. There's something to it beyond a shadow of a doubt. We know, and we know the difference between a dream and an out of body experience. There's a clear, like for me anyway, I can write down what that is. But sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, you're absolutely right. That like what the pool of energy healing. I remember years ago, when I was still doing a bit of music. So in the end, my last touch of music career was teaching violin at this school, and it was really funny. The last time I taught was 2011, so it wasn't that long ago. And so I was doing half Reiki, half that. And I would notice in my energy field, like people would say, oh, how are you going? What are you doing these days? And probably as a guy, maybe, because I sensed this energy slightly of embarrassment or something. I didn't quite own it. And I go, I'm doing a little bit of Reiki, doing music. You probably know that too.
Reiki.
That's right. And it was like, oh, you're doing a bit of Reiki, like, oh, what do they think of that guy? And I was even quizzing my own responses, the way I would respond. And at that particular time, I knew in the astral, like I knew that we had this perfect template around us. I knew that we were abundance, as in, and material well-being was not dependent upon what we go out and do. It's the wrong way around. Material abundance is what we are. Anyway, I was having these realizations in the astral, and then I was still going to do a job that I didn't really want in the music. And I've mentioned this to you before, Phil, and it was funny because when I'd had these meetings with the director of music who I didn't get on with, and I was becoming quite belligerent, and I was going through this notion of being invisible, this feeling that, and more I feel that we are, and what I think that translates into is that we're losing charge. So part of our whole healing as an individual, because as healers, we're looking to kind of get rid of that karmic charge that are within our kind of bodies and things. So I just refused to answer any questions that I didn't deem appropriate or that I didn't wish to answer. And it was really funny looking back. A few of my musical colleagues, like, had you been in the room with me, you know, if you'd been a guitar teacher at that school, you would have said, "Greg, you are hilarious." You would have seen what I was doing. I just refused. I just wouldn't answer. I just looked through people. I would just look through people, because I thought I was going through this whole thing of what is this reality? And I think one of the great springboards to the astral is to often question, what does it mean to be awake? You know, as in 3D. And am I dreaming now? Am I awake now? What is that distinction? Because that can be a springboard into lucid dreams. But once I then went the way of doing this, you know, woo-woo stuff, the Reiki and that, and owning it, now I'm kind of like, oh, you know, it's great. I'm a Reiki master. I teach Reiki. But when I look back to those years ago, like I was uncomfortable. It is so interesting, this notion of being authentic and what that means to every individual, because it's different. And even moving even earlier than that, when I came back from Austria, and I had a chance, I came back, I'd been living over there for 10 years. I came back to Melbourne. This was 2001. And I was getting into Reiki already at that stage. And I had a chance to go to Italy. There was this conductor of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, and he apparently, you know, said, "Look, Greg, why don't you give it another shot? Don't move away from music. Come and study with me in Italy." I remember then it was like a crossroad. It was like a fork in the road. I remember thinking, okay, let's think about this. I really had to look into myself. I thought, okay, do I want to spend my life studying musical scores, working with the egos of musicians, because musicians, you know, classical musicians. Yeah. Anyway, enough said. Or do I want to go this way? And the part of me that thought of going the way of energy and the experience, astral experience and Reiki and all that, I thought, not going to be an easy one, but I feel like a pup. You know, when I look at it that way, I'm sort of going, it looks like fun. The other way I feel I know, the musical way, I remember Leonard Bernstein said years ago, who was a famous conductor, said, "Oh, it's so easy because I've done this before." And I remember the art of conducting for me did feel very easy. For me, it was all about the tricky thing was managing musicians. and the problem is, I didn't want to get into that world. I love music, but I didn't want the world of music / mankind involvement with music, as in the diplomatic aspects of orchestral world were just a frightmare. And I found that because I was naturally becoming authentic through these experiences I was having with the astral experiences, I found that I was often saying my truth to people of importance that I shouldn't have been saying my truth at that time. And I wasn't being a smart ass. I would just come out with a certain comment. Someone would then say, "Greg, that guy's really famous. You probably shouldn't have said that." And I was thinking, well, first of all, two things. First, who gives a hoot? That's how I feel. Second thing is, what was I thinking? Why would I say that when I'm a pretty quiet kind of, why would I? And then I saw a pattern that there's an aspect of me moving away from that. I remember the last thing I ever conducted was back here, and it was in this music, it was a youth thing. It was like a music camp in Geelong. And I said, "Oh yeah, I'll go along and conduct." And it was some Beethoven thing, overture, and it was good. But I actually felt, and I mentioned this to you, I felt these invisible hands forcing my hands away from the podium. And I was just sweating. I thought, "Greg, survival, mate." Then I give up. It was like handcuffs. I give up. So it was a feeling of, I guess on a certain level, I was looking for very strong messages. And this is what I say to a lot of the listeners: ask for that message, ask for that guidance, because guidance is real. So in many ways, it was lucky, and you probably felt the same things, Phil, where we haven't necessarily consciously asked for the guidance. It just come. but then the time delay, because we're in the 3D time continuum, it took a long time. That was the last time I conducted was, I don't know how many years ago. I think at that stage, I was already a Reiki master. So that was 19 years ago I became a Reiki master. So like the crossover was really dense, you know, and then I started not to like myself when I was still doing music. Then when I pulled totally out of the musical world, I realized I'm not a belligerent employee, or I really did not like my, because of the way I was acting toward people. I just realized that workplace for me had become toxic for my system. And in the end, it's not about being selfish. It's not about being self-centered. In the end, you've got to follow your own calling. You've got to follow your own calling, because otherwise it's going to bite you, and it's going to bite you bad. It's going to bite you bad. And even within that calling, you've still got to follow certain directions. It's like this book at the moment is nibbling at my ankles. Like I've got to, and it's tricky because I'm getting toward the end of this fiction book, and I'm trying to, it's a spiritual adventure, but at the same token, as a writer myself, I don't want to become corny. I don't want to become too preachy, and it's got to be fun, but at the same time, it's got to have a message. So we're all the time, we're being kind of summoned by these higher aspects of ourselves to kind of step up, and not in a negative way, but to step into our realities, to step into our truest selves. So it's a journey and a half, and no matter what stage on that journey we're on, we'll always have obstacles. That's the nature of a journey. You can't not, if it were just this escalator to heaven kind of thing. As the song was Stairway to Heaven, not Escalator to Heaven. It's a lot more work going up a stairway than an escalator. So that's pretty corny. But anyway.
No, that's great. You're right. And, and I think too that when you find yourself spending time in different groups of people, like as an example, when you're hanging out with musos all the time, and that's a whole nother conversation. Like walking between worlds, like you go and through the course of our weeks and days, we have to go and hang out with groups of people. I'm sure the yoga people have a slightly different feel than the Reiki people. There'll be some crossover there. And then, I'll hang out with a lot of magical practitioners of, say, hermetics and things like that. And that's, I've got to say, the particular branch that I hang out with, they're wonderful people. I'm very, very grateful to have found this particular community, because they're all really quite thoughtful and respectful and nice in that. Whereas in some other groups, oh man, it's a lucky dip really. But, when you transition essentially into this new arena of operation, say as a Reiki teacher, and letting those old things go, I have to say, I revisit the musical self every so often. Like right now, I promised my YouTubers once I hit 500 subs, I was going to make them a song. Yeah, and so I've got a song that I've been chipping away at, and it's a bit long in the tooth. Sorry, everyone. I am working on it. But I've really got to get myself in the zone to do that. To do it honestly and sincerely, and it's quite different. I also find that when people hit me up to jam and that, things like covers are a real struggle. If I'm going to do any music, it's going to have to be preferably instrumental and original. I don't know, like when you step in, I think what it is too is that once you start getting into energetics in any way, you become a lot more sensitive to energy and subtle things. And so music like that carries a certain kind of charge or a vibe. You used to be numb to that stuff back in the day, but there's things I can't eat. There's things I can't watch. There's things I can't listen to now. They're just like extremely unpleasant and counterproductive to maintaining my equilibrium, which is part of my job. Part of my job is to remain, in a certain state of being, because that's how I serve my, the people that come to see me best. That's how I get the best out of me and how other people get the best from me. And so wandering back into these old things, you get a reminder and it's like, oh yes, that's right. But I still like to think that I can walk in these worlds and return unscathed with some jewels. Like some things, they just become so minutely less. And I mean, I know you obviously still have, your lady is a wonderful musician, and that is kept alive through a significant other. And I think I have still have musician friends in that I hang out with as well. But regardless, moving into for ourselves our own personal kind of micro of going, what, I need to change here. And you get that fork in the road and you're like, ooh, man, that's a pretty tempting offer. And it might be this, or it might be the travel, or it might be the gigs. It's like, yeah, bro, it's all corporate gigs, top paying, top clientele, nice gigs. You get all the equipment set up. You just show up with your guitar. We'll provide the stuff. And it's like, oh. But if I'm honest with myself, like you said, if you don't heed the call, and I've been exceptionally guilty of this, and we've talked about this many times, it starts to wear you down, and it starts to hurt a bit, even if you don't follow these innate callings. And yeah, so I'm just going to say this out to the audience. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I've got my wonderful brother and guest here, Greg Doyle. We're talking everything from just basically stepping into and embodying a spiritual reality. This is just reality, and talking about it, and some of the challenges that we've had in sort of because there's many people who still run their functional family business lives, and then there's guys like me and Greg that just had to basically just go. We had very, very lucrative, opportunistic careers that we just couldn't do anymore. And for me, it actually started to grate me, and I had to go through a personal crisis that was quite exceptional to pull me away from that whole world. And I went back and got slapped, and back, and I got slapped again. I got tired of getting slapped, man. But
interesting what you say there too, because I remember it is fascinating, isn't it? And some people might look at wonder what direction they're supposed to go in and what. And I remember as a kid, music was probably the same with you, Phil. I mean, if you've gone on to do it professionally, you find it was pretty natural. You sort of sure, you still went through your times where you didn't want to practice for a while, but I remember thinking, I get music. When as a kid, I get it. I know what's going on, and then you realize, like when you teach music, that most kids actually don't. Like you're teaching and you're telling what to do, but you realize because most of them don't become professional. Do you know what I mean? So of course, do you know what I mean? So you realize it dawns upon you over time that they're not. Oh, okay, and then what's interesting is I remember thinking when I did make that decision to go out of music, I remember thinking, okay, when I really looked at it, it was that feeling that my spirit knows me. I know it. That's why it's been comfortable. But this other world that seems so enticing, this world of invisibility, like, there's a lot of trust that's got to come with that, because I even have Reiki students now teaching masters too and stuff. And they're saying, this is good, Greg, but how can I actually make a profession out of it? How do you make a profession out of it? I said, well, what comes with that is a lot of faith. You've got to put the hours in, not for the hours so much, but just because if you're, like as I said yesterday, I was doing a lot of research, and thanks to you, Phil, for giving me the inspiration to look at some of these books on Reiki. I've really enjoyed the research for research's sake, because I'm not looking for any end to it per se. And this is what I say to a lot of people, like if you're getting into Reiki or getting into astral travel, you enjoy the processes, like you found with the hermetic stuff, like the exercises themselves. That's the joy. And this is what someone at this astral retreat last week said. She was quite young, and she just said, to be honest, I'm a little bit overwhelmed by all this information today. And then someone else said, you just enjoy the process, don't worry about the end result. And that's very true. So it's like, and there's a lot of stuff out there. So you've got to look at what resonates with you. But like the Reiki practices or the meditations that I work with, each day, I'll change it round, and I'm not an expert breath worker, but I'll do a bit of breathing stuff here. And the thing is, to meditate, really, the purest is just to be with yourself. To be with yourself, that is meditation. And and I've got some clients who say, "Oh, I know you like surfing, Greg, and I go surfing too, so that's meditation." I say, "Well, it's not. It's you're focused on what's going on, but meditation is just being quiet with yourself." And I find this what it brings to you is, as you were saying, one could have a lucrative career doing something else. But I just remember thinking, if I do the scores, I do that, somehow that's a distraction. I felt that doing all of that, I'm going to be so distracted. And therefore I
Yeah.
thought, okay, if that makes me feel I'm going to be distracted from what? Distracted from kind of doing nothing worldly. That's what I felt. I thought I need the space to empty myself. I don't want to fill myself with, because conductors have to spend all day studying these things, and because you've got to know it better than musicians, otherwise the musicians are not going to respect you. So yeah, and I remember just thinking that is a distraction. Now, if that was my calling, the music, then I wouldn't have felt it to be a distraction. So I think that anyone who's looking for the direction of their life, look at what doesn't feel the distraction. Like what fills you with this, this big golden question mark. Like, if you're that person, if you're inclined to be that explorer, that adventurer, then comes in trust, because then you've got to think, well, can I maintain that life on a physical level? And then you've got to move into trust and go with that trust, and sometimes that means still getting up and doing things to meet that end. But yeah, I'm just fascinated with motivation, and it's really good for people to think, and sometimes at the end of last year, I weighed things up. I thought, now, is there anything else, and this whole era that we've been gone through is putting up question marks to everyone. Everyone's questioning to a certain extent, because we always have the right, we have free will. We can choose to go whichever direction we wish. So it's often good to assess in yourself, where am I going? What is this? What is this? What are the options? And it's a fascinating process,
Yeah, and you're right. There's when you find yourself losing interest in something, it's good to, I think, there's a series of phrases that I've heard, and it crosses various cultural and philosophical traditions. We have this concept of removing what is not to help to discover what is. And because sometimes it's very hard, there's like a thing, and I can sense it. Off in the distance, I can see this amorphous blob, and it doesn't have a well-defined shape, but I know that's the general compass direction. That's the north. And what happens is that there's these things that thing is not. And we know what those are intrinsically, and we have to go, okay, well, maybe it's socializing at the bars, maybe it's certain social groups, maybe it's staying up late, eating the wrong foods, not adhering to some kind of exercise regime, these types of things. Some things take away our energy and some things give us energy. And identifying these by just even playfully just going, you know what, I'm just not going to do this one thing for the week, and see how you feel. I mean, if you feel freer after it, and actually one of the teachers I've come across, Mark Rasmus, he's an ex-Brisbane dude too, I think. He's got a great exercise, and I wrote an article about this, which, you go and do a thing that you like doing, or you think you like doing, or something that you just do, and then you go and sit quietly after doing it. Do you feel still and peaceful, satisfied in that? Or do you feel like an inner resistance, or some kind of like, oh, that's pretty loud. Can you hear the dog?
Yeah, it's not my dog.
No,
it's your dog.
We've got a couple of pooches next door that get quite excited. So yeah, we come across these things that we know just don't jive well with who we are and what we do. But this is one of the benefits of being is doing these stillness practices, is that when you get really quiet, it's quite easy to sort of like just poke your awareness into a field of operation. Guitar playing, guitar teaching, two very different things. I want to say, if anyone out there who's a guitar player is thinking about being a guitar teacher or a music teacher from your instrument, they're very different worlds. I've got to say, being a performer and being a teacher are very different things. And sometimes they can feed into each other, and sometimes they can almost kill each other. I just want to say that. But finding ways to become deeply aware of what your true native motivations and aspirations and inspirations are, because staying inspired. That's like, inspiration and motivation are very similar, but I guess, you can't always just pluck them out of the ether. You've sometimes got to, I love journaling. Journaling helps me to sort of like put things, whatever's going on into places so that I can cleanly see them. It helps me to externalize internal things that may be driving and taking over. You're in a soup. If you're in the soup, you don't always know you're in the soup. And so you've got to put the soup on the page and start dissecting the soup and finding out what it's made up of. Oh, geez, I didn't realize there's a piece of capsicum in there. Well, I'm allergic to capsicum. Well, I'm not, but I'm just saying as an example. But you might find that there's things that aren't really contributing to your overall, thing. And I think too that, if you look out into the world of those around you, you can see that I just find that other people make such a great mirror. If I see someone that I don't like, or someone around me is doing something that I don't like, and that I go, well, could that be a reflection of something within myself? Now, some people will probably laugh at that, but whatever's. These are some old traditions talk about this. Essentially, the world is your feedback monitor or your mirror, to help you understand. The dream environment is highly indicative of this. When you dream about people you're not necessarily dreaming about that person. It's just that they're a reflection of an aspect of yourself. And obviously, when you go out of body and you start having thoughts and they start manifesting faster, there's no time delay like we have here in the physical. There's in there, it's instantaneous. And so there's a level of prompt reality that becomes exceedingly apparent in realities like the astral and the other realms, where and this is why it's a highly valuable tool in my view, because those of you who are doing sort of shadow work, or you're doing even just your black and white soul mirrors where you're wanting to know thyself, dream work and out of body work can help to give you insight into that. And I'd say too, like, if just from my own point of view, is that if you've got a lot of funky habits and you go astral, chances are those things will be presented to you. They will, especially if you go into the lucid dream environment, which can be considered like a personal sand pit or pocket of the astral. And you talk to your lucid dream environment and say, hey, what do I need to work on? Generally speaking, you'll get shown something that will be at the top of the list. And so these are, valuable excursions for getting to know yourself, because, I mean, if we look at someone like the Buddha who's saying, nirvana, if that's a real thing, is the release of attachment, aversion, and delusion. How do you discover those things? Well, you can write down what you know, you can ask people, and you can go into these other realms and you can quiz these deeper aspects of yourself, and you'll get them a lot more instantaneously.
Absolutely, it cuts through the chafe. You go straight to the point. But I love what you were saying before about when you have these activities that you do regularly, to sit down with yourself, because afterwards. Because I noticed, like last week, as you know, I like surfing, but I hadn't been surfing well lately. I've been annoyed with myself. And last week, I sat in the water for a couple of hours, and until I didn't leave the water until I was comfortable with my surfing. And I thought, what was that all about? Why have I been irritated with myself in the water? And I often think that, even when I've been playing tennis, because I like to play tennis, I like to move, probably a bit too much, but and sometimes I get a bit shitty with myself after playing tennis. I'm looking at that. What is that? What's actually going on there? What's actually going on there? And because in the end, as you say, everything is a reflection of us, because in the end, it's your reaction to something. It's not the actual thing. It's your reaction to it. So it's your reaction to the tennis, or the reaction to something, your reaction to the food. So in the end, everything is guiding us to, if we want to greater knowing of what we are, moving away from the who. So the fact is that some people are more interested in doing that consciously, and a lot of people are not. So that's the interesting thing. Like recently, I was in this bakery a few days ago, and there was a kind of acquaintance of mine. his kid he's just finishing school. His son was in a bakery, and it's very nice because I just thought, look, I'll have a bit of it was a French kind of bakery. Anyway, filled up the bag with all these goodies that I didn't. It was a nice little gift. Anyway, I said, so how are you? This was just interesting. I just said, how are you going? It was more the response, do you know what you want to study? And he said, I'm just going to do, study something that makes me money. This was a 17-year-old, but it was the way he said it. I thought, good on you. But the way he said it was like almost within him, he knew, I'm just going to study something that makes me money. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but in his field was almost a slump because I've known the kid for years, and not that he should be a musician or anything like that, but he loved artistic things. There's nothing wrong with doing a career that, good on him, especially in uncertain economic. But it was interested more in his energy signature. I thought, oh wow, that's a very deadpan look, and the eyes of a 17-year-old boy that are already kind of lost that spark, and maybe he'll get that spark back again in what he does. But it just sort of struck me as, oh wow, I thought to myself, oh, when I was that age, I wasn't particularly realistic. I just loved music, and I was just going in that direction, not for any outcome. And I know that's probably an old-fashioned approach, but and it depends probably on parental advice and that kind of stuff. But yeah, interesting, just the energy of people and how they sometimes kind of have this. I don't know. It was just like a defeated look in the eye. That was how I read it. And once again, it can be misconstrued as I'm judging him, because in the end, my reaction is, of course, an aspect of myself, working on myself, particularly in a career that requires a lot of trust to be materially existent. So, and I'm aware that could be where I'm coming from. Maybe there's a certain aspect of me envying that young boy who's doing a career that is there just to make money. The word "just" was the interesting one in there, but I think, anyway, just this energetic aspect of ourselves. I'm not even sure why I'm going there. I'm not sure what we started talking about, but
we know we just go on tangents, and it's fine.
That's right. But yeah.
Cool. I just want to say to everyone in the chat, thanks everyone for joining us. Greg and I are both pretty well experienced Reiki teachers and practices. And so if any of you have questions on the topic of Reiki, please drop them into the chat. Or if you've got any questions about what we've been talking about, I think one of the reasons I really love catching up with Greg is that we have a little bit of a similar backstory about how we came to this. And so, finding people that you can relate to, I found it to be just highly advantageous, and because it helps me make sense. Basically, the bro, hang on, where is he? There he is. The bro here is basically, he's a few steps down the road from me and he's been on a somewhat similar path. And so, I've just found it so invaluable to connect with Greg and hear his story, because it's helped me to sort of find my way a little bit. And, when he talks about, so what do you do? I'm a Reiki teacher. Yeah, I mean, that's been me for many years too, I guess it's because I hang out in my hometown where I was very well known as a guitar teacher and that. And so people still see me as that. And people still ask me about the music and stuff. And it used to really actually get my goat up. But more of the best thing about the practices is that they chill you out and they make you, I don't want to say passive or anything like that, or pacifist, but it tends to, I've just found the nature of the work is that you've got to be level, things I just don't have the emotional reactions to things that I used to. But like I said at the beginning, far out, things are showing up sometimes that really test me where I'm at, because there's this thing of righteous anger, the sacred gift of anger, where it's going, well, it's funny actually, because in that Nicholas Pearson book on the foundations of Reiki Ryoho that I suggested to you, he talks about, because he does that's a excellent. That's a very
It is.
erudite, scholarly breakdown of the whole thing. Like the guy's switched on. He's got actually a range of great books. Great to listen to, guy, as well. But he talked about the oh geez, what I was talking about. He was talking about anger and saying, like ideally, anger can be used as an impetus for change, but it's also just thrown around and misused all the time. Like sometimes you've got to dig in deep and you can pull on that. But it's like anything, you don't use it unless you need it. And another guest that I've had on a few times saying, like these are all gifts from God, in a sense, you might say, that, they're usable. Some of them, the problem is that these things will have a price attached to them as well. Even being still and stagnate, that will have a price to it, and you kind of, I just find myself, I'm like, I've got to find the sweet spot and then just find ways to fatten that out so that the path isn't too narrow. Sometimes it's like I feel like I'm walking on a tightrope because I've certainly got a lot to say about a lot of things. And on this YouTube channel, I'm certainly not as probably boisterous as I once was, because I was, pretty boisterous, I guess, back in the day. But I just felt very strongly and I was very passionate. And so, so anyway, what do we got? We've got a comment here. Let's see what it says. Okay, what do we got here? Are there more Reiki quacks or more mindfulness quacks? That is, experts who don't know what they're doing. Well, I mean, that's a bit of a hard question to answer, but I mean, if I just, Greg, do you want to have a crack at this one first?
Did you say, do you want to have a quack at this?
Yeah, that's how we do it. We like to play.
Yeah, we do like to play. Are there more Reiki cracks? Or look, I don't. It's really hard to know because we tend to we do our own thing on mindfulness quacks. Oh, there's experts who don't know what they're doing. That's a very difficult one to ask because
I tell you what, I've got something.
I don't know. Yeah.
I would say that across the board, there are so many people involved in this topic of conversation, whether it's meditation or mindfulness. And I would like to think that the large number of Reiki teachers and people that I've met they want to know more. A lot of them will hang their hats on a thing and just do that thing. And you can learn these things just from doing them. You don't have to go. I mean, I've gone so deep with this topic, and and I've found the best teachers personally that I think I've come across, as far as the people who, like the Franz Steiner, who travels and goes and tries to find the people and interview them, and goes right out of his way, but you're always going to get I guess people who have a view or something. It's essentially, it comes down to this for me, is that, especially studying Hermetics, all of these spiritual practices can be boiled down or distilled down to some kind of mechanical process where you don't need to believe anything. There are natural forces that can be harnessed and worked with, and there's things that we do to refine that process. And like I said, this is a Hermetic point of view. Now, people don't know what they're doing. Seriously, I was doing healings on people before I studied and practiced Reiki, and my library of the various types of healing techniques and schools of things, it's reasonable. And what I found is that if you have someone on your table and you've never done healing before, and you just set up a nice space and you put your hands on them, and you just sort of respectfully move around and just go, what, I really want this person to feel better, and I feel good, and I want them to feel at least, as least as good as I'm feeling, if not better, then I think that's worth trying out. You don't necessarily need to go and practice or study a Reiki to perform healing. But if anything, it's like some people are just so stressed out, they just need to have a nice peaceful experience on the table. Maybe some nice music. I don't know about incense. Like I've been for Reiki sessions where I've had ladies with all these oils and smells, and it's actually like I can't relax. It's like so overpowering, and I'm getting crystals dropped on me while I'm getting into a nice space, which is fine, but it's very distracting. So I think anyone that's trying to, at the core of it, help people to find peacefulness, stillness, tranquility in their lives, whether they're doing hands-on healing or not, it's a
beneficial thing generally. Yeah, because it's like prayer, isn't it? I guess if you're wishing the best for someone, it's coming from, and I think with Reiki, there's something, I don't know, it feels good and it feels right, and I know that's subjective, but there may be some people in it for the wrong reasons, but I think those sort of people, if you come across them, like anything, perhaps. I mean, it's not a regulated industry, so I think everybody has to use their intuition and their own discernment to go toward.
I would wonder if you could regulate it. And thank you, Oswald Spengler. Like, I appreciate that you're not trying to have a crack at anything here, because the reality is that there's people out there with bad intentions. There's a lot of stories of gurus, trying to take advantage of their students and doing all sorts of things. Because when you come into this, people will generally show up to classes. They've got they're wide-eyed, they're genuinely interested. They've heard about this phenomena of unlikely healing outcomes or spontaneous remissions from, at a very physical level, of chronic illness or acute problems and things like that. And they're curious, and they I really like looking after people, but I just don't feel drawn towards herbs or naturopathy or massage or whatever. I just feel like I want to do something energetically. And there's as you go deeper and deeper into this, and you become more sensitive to it, and you find a vocabulary that allows you to articulate this to other people. And you kind of have to, as a teacher, you're trying to bring topics that are almost beyond the intellect down into the physical, into a verbal way. And one of the reasons why we have brothers and sisters on the path that we connect with is because sometimes people can help us put those things into words for the benefit of those who are coming after us. And this is the kind of the role I see of the teacher. And I've got to say, coming across the works of people like Mark Rasmus, and I bring that name up before, and there's a few people who revolve around the particular Bard and Hermetics teachers, because he was an energy healer and a healer as well. He was in a difficult time in communist, Czechoslovakia. So, you couldn't openly talk about and do certain things. And it's funny, even when you read the Reiki source book from Franz Steiner, he even talks about Reiki going underground because,
Japan,
it wasn't allowed. And then when the Yanks came in, the Americans came in, they brought their medicine system, and that had to get put underground again. And so, but it survived. And, it's funny, even us sitting here talking about Reiki, I sometimes forget just how blessed we are to have a well-known modality that we can leverage the public familiarity with, to support ourselves while we do this. And I wholeheartedly believe we bring genuine value to the lives of people that come on our tables, come on our tables with, with the intent of wanting to feel better. We've put a lot of time and effort into this, and it may seem like a simple thing, but if you're an emotional mess and you're physically unwell and out of shape, and you can't focus and concentrate, this doesn't make for an ideal practicer. If you're having those issues, you need to go and see a practicer, not be a practicer, in my view. And sorry, I'm wandering around here, but I forget sometimes. I take it for granted how lucky we are, to be in the parts of the world. Greg's an Aussie, I'm in New Zealand here, and we're allowed to do this. And imagine if they've just regulated acupuncture here in New Zealand, and and also, wait for it, traditional Maori medicine. The government's got their fingers around that now.
Oh.
And so if you're out in the rurals, out in the bush, and now your tradition that you've been passed down to, now you got to go and ask for permission. You probably practice it anyway. And so when I hear people say, oh man, wouldn't it be great if Reiki was regulated? I'm like, no, it would not.
No.
How do you regulate something so ephemeral? Because for starters, you would actually have to have them admit that there's a force beyond, and that opens a can of worms that they can't deal with. So it's problematic. And I've even heard Franz Steiner jump on this and give an excellent conversation about that could be the worst thing that ever happened. And I don't see how you could do it anyway, to be honest. Yeah.
No. So there was a certain amount of regulation a while back in terms of insurance, and I remember we had to.
Okay.
But that because at some stage there were a few of the insurance rebate things you could get on Reiki, but that was with I used to be with the Australian Reiki Connection. So John Coleman, I remember now meeting Franz and Bronwyn. Steen. Yeah. I realized now I met him because we were on the same committee for a while together. Hilarious. Wow. I realized that when I saw his picture in the book. So that's the same guy. So they are lovely, lovely people. And John Coleman was the head of art. I think he maybe still is. And that was the time. I remember the last fund that recognized Reiki was the Australian Defence Fund. So, because a lot of soldiers used to come because they could claim on it. So there you just had to show your training, you had to show your lineage, you had to have a certain amount of hours. It was interesting. There's just a few things, but it was pretty token, really. But then that went out the window when they removed the benefits, health benefits thing, which was probably all right because there was a lot of factionalism within these groups, I felt.
Yeah, I tell you, it's funny how you bring up because I've done a lot of searching through forums and looking up the skeptics websites and hearing what people have got to say. And to be fair, they bring up some valid concerns, but then it's usually devolves into some kind of mockery because they've had no personal or realistic experience.
Yeah.
If you go into a session with a bad attitude, the worst thing or the best thing that might happen is that you actually produce an unlikely healing result, and that'll mess with you. But it's also like your attitude can probably affect the potential outcome of the session. But when we look back at the history of Reiki, many of the people that became students and in the early days were ex-military and ex-Navy. Yeah. And when I was searching through some of these skeptics websites, like these are hardcore, man, and for what do they call it? From abracadabra to zombies or something like this. And there was this forum underneath these comments. And there was a guy in there and he says, look, I'm a veteran. I've been through hell. I've done all your damn drugs and done all your damn therapy. And the only thing that worked for me was acupuncture and Reiki. The rest of it you can keep. You can keep all your pills and that. And he was just so great. He was just like, I am so grateful that I found these traditional types of practices, because they worked for him and brought him a quality of life back.
It's funny, isn't it, that people, because I know a few people who I'm close to who it's tricky with friends, who have serious illnesses, and it's often difficult because they know you just as a friend rather than what you do. And of course they won't touch things like Reiki and stuff. And that's phenomenal. Yeah, this phenomenal negligence on their part to look this notion that it's poo-pooed because it's natural. And I look at what they eat. I look at the doctors saying, "Oh no, your appetite's fine. No, drink as many beers as you want in the day. That won't affect your health." And I think of that negligence, and also it's like a death wish in society. Then I think when you're putting something external and you're taking away from your body's own, of course, if it's a terrible situation, immediate situation, a pill can be good, but to rely on pills over a period of time, to have a chronic conditions where the pills basically taking your body's pharmacy, the natural pharmacy within your body, and manipulating it in a way that is very unnatural because of the synthetic things that are being put into your body. I'm flabbergasted, and that And then when these people don't even try what we term as alternative therapy, I'm quite flabbergasted. I know I'm biased, but it just seems on a logical level. Wouldn't you want to go in a way that is less intrusive? Wouldn't you want to at least add that to your way of getting better? So yeah, it's flabbergasting, isn't it, how an external pill from a pharmaceutical company that's motivations are questionable,
Yeah, completely.
are seen as the holy grail. I don't get it, and
It's
I'll have
like,
a painkiller once every few years. If I have some issue,
yeah,
I'll take a painkiller, and that's good, great. It takes away, but
yeah,
to rely on that and not to look, not even, but to ridicule even. I mean, fortunately, I don't feel ridiculed because I only come in contact with people who seek my services. So, but yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? I just find it bizarre.
man. Yeah. So, people know what I do, and, sit down with me for 5 or 10 minutes. We'll just talk, and I may put my hand on your back or take your hand. And, I'm not writing you out an invoice. It's just sit down, and see if you take some benefits. Some people do, some people don't. I mean, my healing diary tells me I've got a pretty highly, a good hit rate of around about 80 to 85% people.
Yeah.
Just about everyone at least feels very relaxed. Yeah. Now, the other thing too is that we're not supposed to heal everybody, because some of those problems they're learning opportunities, and this is a contentious issue. Reading people's karma and things like that. This is why Reiki is great, because it's very much a passive type of healing. You're not really going in and making changes. When you get into deep hermetic work, you don't want to get yourself in trouble unnecessarily, and so I think as far as the value of, look, seriously, it's getting on someone's table, they're setting up a space for you, they're going to help you get comfy, because most people, don't meditate, and they don't meditate regularly if they do. And the Reiki opportunity is essentially, I'm a stillness provider. I could be considered as that. I'm not going to blast you with music. If anything, I might put a bit of white noise on, or a bit of pink noise or something like that. I'm not going to overpower you with smells. I'm not going to, these types of things. But what you said before is so true, and it's hard. And I think it's part of our journey is we just have to accept, even people who've come to us who've had, highly unlikely and very surprising outcomes, you never see them again. And they're looking you in the eye and going, bro, how the hell did you do that? That's weeks I've had this issue and I've been so stressed out and I can't think, and it's gone. And it's like, cool, man. And then you never see them again. And then someone recently, actually I won't go into it, but basically you're seeing people struggling, and it's like, yeah, I'm right here. I'm right here. You can just come and sit with me. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, even some people who are apparent proponents of it, I don't know. Like, this is one of the reasons why I was pretty keen to get out of being a musician, because I think people have a bit of a stigma about musos. Maybe we're just especially rock and blues, but performing musos at bars and stuff. We're just looking to get to hook up or something like that.
Well, that's what you're doing, isn't it?
Oh, that's it. I'm totally into, why do I do Reiki? It's I do it for the money and the chicks, bro. It's totally why it's about, Oh my gosh, yeah. So it's such a lucrative aspect in that.
Of course.
Now, and I'm just, I'm obviously being silly here, but I have to say that when you start hanging out with people that really care about people, and they want to know and they want to explore, having really inquisitive students is such a blessing. I remember the best kids I had as a guitar teacher. They were just happy to be there and sponges, and some of them were just there because they were told to be there. But like you said before, we were self-taught musos, self-generated our interest, and when we don't see that, it can sort of take away a little bit as well. Now I've got another another question from Oswald Spengler here, and we are coming up towards the end of the 90-minute session here, and we want to let the brother go so we can maybe go for a surf or get a game of tennis in. Now, Oswald's back, and he's asking any Reiki orgone overlap, and then he follows that up with Wilhelm Reiki. Now, that's a pretty funny one because he's talking about Wilhelm Reich, who was
So I thought,
who was Sigmund Freud's protege, and he protege, is that the right word? His heir apparent anyway, but he
yeah,
obviously did a lot of experiments and ended up getting locked up. Pretty much what happened with Franz Baden and many other people who were into these things, So, Greg, I'll just spin this one at you. In your experience with, because you're aware of orgone, it's a pretty common sort of terminology. Have you got anything you'd like to share on this question?
oh, look, I don't know. I don't know. I've been given some orgone over the years, and it feels nice.
Oh, you're talking about orgonite, not orgone, the energy. He's talking about
no,
that.
I'm thinking of orgonite. No, I can't really say what he's getting at there. So, is it the same energy? Is he saying with orgone and Reiki, or?
Well, I guess what it is that we have all these different words from different traditions that all kind of point in the same direction. And I just want to say, Oswald, thank you. That Wilhelm Reiki joke is just gold. I'm going to use that. Thank you. But when it comes to the overlap question that you've got here, my understanding is that when you read the literature on Wilhelm Reich, he basically creates these boxes where he takes organic and inorganic material and puts them in layers, makes a box out of it, and then you leave it. And then over time, it starts to gather this strange blue hue to it. And then he puts a pipe on it and he just squirts you with it, whatever. And then it just magically cures your illnesses and problems and things. And it can also be a bit overpowering too. And then, of course, there's negative orgone, which he was finding at the near water and these types of things. And he built these big pipes where he would translate these and do cloud bursting and busting and things. But as far as your question goes, my understanding is that, and this is just my current understanding and it's flexible, is that Reiki indicates a spectrum or a scale of energetics all the way from the physical vital, lower dantian, lower tanden, all the way up to Akasha and light. So it goes up because Japanese energy systems do talk about they instead of wuji, they call it the ku or the void. And then they have their own words for things like light. And we see the symbol of Rei and Reiki. If you look at the top right of the screen here, you'll see the logo of Reiki. The top image of that pictograph there is also represented in Chinese medicine, in TCM and in Qigong as Ling Qi. And the symbol for Ling is the most refined version. So basically, my understanding currently is that Reiki, it's for physical, astral, mental, and spiritual healing. Whereas in Hermetics, we talk about the vital, astral, mental, Akashic, and non-dual things. So Reiki is just a very broad term that represents, basically you come in and you get what you need. Which is the squeakiest wheel? That's the one that's going to get the oil. You might come in with a sore thumb, but you might walk out with a healed heart and you keep your sore thumb. But that's what got you there. As far as orgone goes, my understanding is that is at the vital level, judging by the color, because it's blue and it's very close to the physical. And so most of what I understood Wilhelm Reich corrected was mostly physical things. And don't quote me on that. I need to go back and check that. So that is my most succinct response to that question. So thank you, Oswald. That was a really good question. Thank you. Okay. Now, Greg, before we say thank you so much for being here and blessings to you and yours, let's give your awesome website a fantastic plug. So where's the button that I'm looking for? This one here. Now, where are we? Okay, so what's coming up? Let's go to your event. So you've got a Reiki 1 course coming up, you said shortly.
I do. Yeah, that's what's coming up this weekend. Because I'm often putting on private ones as well. So, and then pretty soon, I've got this. I've recorded. It's like a 14-day Astral Challenge. Like
Oh,
videos
where is
every.
that? Is that
I'm
somewhere on the website?
about to finish it. I'm about to finish it. So like the first 7 days are free, and then if you want, you can go finish the next 7 days, and that's leading to a course kind of thing. So just to,
Hmm.
because people, what I found is with the astral thing, it's kind of like even on this retreat we had, people are saying, oh, we want to go astral traveling now. Um, and what I'll say often, like during a workshop, because I'm teaching you certain things, you won't always go during a workshop. It's more the techniques you want to take home and practice.
Yes.
So, and you've got to enjoy those techniques. So a lot of people, I think it's not so much stickability. I think because they haven't actually had the experience, therefore they, on a certain level, they think if they don't get it within a couple of days, it's never going to happen. Whereas, so often I'm just trying to help people through to actually make it through. So yeah, I've got these new things coming through, these new videos, just to help, just to guide, like a drip feed technique with people.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, because that way, it's just like opening a little present every day. You don't, and they're not too long, just 15-minute meditations. Is just a thing that, otherwise people get overwhelmed with information. They don't know where to start, and once again, because they haven't seen the prize, they don't really know how to get to the prize. If that's an alleged prize, the astral travel thing. So that's what I'm kind of working on at the moment, and I've almost got that finished. So that's what I've been occupying myself with. So yeah,
That's actually a really good strategy to help
yeah,
people.
I think
Like
so.
it's just like a guitar student or a music student will come every week for a lesson,
Exactly,
and this,
exactly.
and and if you can afford it, you should find a go and get a Reiki session every month at the least, and
I
just
know.
measure the benefit from it. Buying a Reiki session package like a 10 bundle or a 5 bundle, and just doing that.
Yeah,
But like with the astral travel, I mean, that's something, Reiki is something essentially that we do for others, but these workshops are to help you learn to do for yourself, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, but you've got to put your yards in. You've got to do the drills, man, and you're basically awakening and activating new doors of perception, and that takes effort because those, if you were a kid, it might be a lot easier, but if
Yeah,
you're a
it
grown
does.
adult, a lot of your like these inherent capabilities have been calcified and are sort of trapped, and so you got to free them, right? Because, like you said at the beginning of the conversation, we already are everything. We're a micro of the macro.
Mm.
All we're doing is remembering, and this remembering process involves some work. We're basically finding those bits of ourselves that we're just unaware of currently, and it takes work.
That's
But that
right.
idea of what you're offering there, I think that's a great strategy from a teaching
Yeah.
point of view, where people have a daily thing or a sec 2 daily thing to help keep them on track. And I've seen some other great teachers do that too, where they set up like an
Mm.
email, like a daily email scheduled
That's
up
right.
over like a month. And
Yeah.
I might actually have a look at that because Substack offers that kind of thing too with scheduling emails,
Mm.
and they don't charge you. If anything, you get paid for doing it rather than these other
Mm.
platforms.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that's really great. So, all right, well,
That'll be up
everyone,
soon.
oh, that's great.
That'll
So
be
make sure
yeah.
you check out Greg's website, guys, and watch out for that new approach. And you've got a Reiki 1 course coming up, fantastic. And you're
Mm.
obviously, and what I love about Greg, he lives in Queensland in a place called, wait for it, Bardon, Bardon. I even got
That's
him to get
funny.
it. I managed to talk him into getting a copy of Initiation into Hermetics for those of you in the crowd. Oh, there we go. So he'll take that at his own pace,
Exactly. I'm
and
enjoying it.
that's great. And I want to say yes for anyone in the crowd. Yes, I have just mentioned to him that the appendix at the end of section 3 is got some gems for healing stuff. So yes, thank you for those of you that might decide to bring that up. But Greg, is there anything else you'd like to mention, or shall we just give you the final words?
Oh, look, no, look, I've loved this chat as always, Phil. I always find it inspiring. And I think, as you say, community is an important thing. I think, I think of the important things are your own practice. In a nutshell, I feel dropping into the heart, meditating each day, a community as we're having here. And it's really, really important, I think, to surround yourself with those people who you vibe with and who make you feel good and make you feel at home. And then the third thing would be, go out there and share it with others. Like it's really great to help others, and that doesn't always have to be in a monetary way, in whatever way that is. And that's why I urge everybody those three things: your own thing, community, and to share with others. And that just seems my message for the day. But thanks, Phil. It's lovely always speaking with you, as always.
Well, you are most welcome, my bro. And it's been too long since we've done something like this.
Yeah.
And we've had, we've had over 10 or 11 people in the live stream, which is wonderful. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's joined us today. I hope you've all taken something of value away from the shared experiences, and that as we seek to sort of bring these topics into something we can share, into a language that people can relate to, because that's really, for me as a teacher, is the most important thing. And so when I try to teach the young kid how to play a song that I know intrinsically, and he just looks at me with a blank stare, I go, oh, wow, I need to up my ability to convey understanding to others. So, Greg, thank you so much. Please go to gregdoyleastral.com to support Greg. He's a wonderful man, and he is a very busy man too. And so, you can learn to become a teacher through Greg as well. That's a longer road. But please, if you're in the Gold Coast sort of area, Brisbane, you're in Barton, you have access to a wonderfully experienced teacher, practicer, explorer, and just a really nice guy. And thank you so much, Greg. And thank you to everyone in the crowd. Have a beautiful day. Stay well, Greg. If I get you to stick around for just 1 minute after I finish the stream. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you guys again soon.